My name is Nikita Prokhorov, and I'm a graphic designer, lettering artist, author, teacher, pun maker. Even though the last one doesn't really pay, it more likely turns people away, but I still do it because I love it. I live between Connecticut and New York. I was born and raised in Russia, moved here in 1989, and started off with a boring degree in computer science, realized I didn't love that at all. And then I decided to switch to design, and it was the best I could have done. So there's my shortest intro I've ever given, I think. When I was in grad school, my typographic training didn't go beyond traditional typesetting, layout. In fact, I don't think I've even drawn a custom letter until I left grad school. And one day I was browsing through Barnes and Noble, those bookstore things that people used to go to before everything became available on the internet. And I was just looking at some bestsellers, recently published books, and I saw the book Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. So I picked it up. It looked interesting enough, and I liked the duality of the title. Before I even knew ambigrams were involved, I just loved the title. So I picked it up and just started flipping through it. And the first ever ambigram I've seen was on, I think, page 6 or page 7 into the book. And an ambigram is a word that when you rotate it, mirror it, or put it in any other perspective, other than that's the way we always read words, left to right, and then we read top to bottom. We never rotate any actual book pages. So it's a word that from any perspective, other than its original, reads as the same or a different word. The best example that I can give on the spot that everybody will know is the word SOS, which is save our souls or save our ships. And one of the reasons it's a natural ambigram is because regardless where you see it from the air, if someone is stranded somewhere, they'll read SOS no matter which way they're looking at it. So that's the easiest example of an ambigram I can give. And when I saw it on page 6 or page 7 of the book Angels and Demons, as a graphic designer, I became completely enamored with it because I've always loved art that makes you go back and take a second look. So like the work by Dali or the work by Rene Magritte or Andre Breton. I love all those works that make you come back a second or third time. And Escher was my favorite artist as a kid. And, I haven't changed much in that regard because he still is. So then I started experimenting with my ambigrams. I didn't finish the book for at least 2 or 3 weeks because I was trying to experiment, figure out how to do an ambigram. And I realized that my actual hand lettering skills were woefully non-existent. So I decided, okay, maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse. I need to learn how to draw letters before I try an ambigram. In the design industry, as you know, there's tons of books on, best of the best, letterheads, logos, brochures, animation, video. There's a lot of best of the best collections, juried books, lettering books. But ambigram is such a small niche of the design and lettering world that there's never really been a book about ambigrams. So I decided to just put together a book with a gallery of ambigrams with a couple of case studies, a panel of judges that can evaluate the ambigrams. And that took about a year and a half to put together from the ungodly amount of rejections I gotten from a lot of publishers because, it's not a traditional, widely accepted niche. And, I think I went to 30 or 40 different publishers. They all said no. And then one of them said yes. And that was kind of the beginning of the beginning for the book, where went through about a year and a half of revisions, designs, and getting the work for the book was challenging in the sense that it was very international, very diverse. So making sure everyone signs the documents, making sure everyone is on the same page file-wise. I had one, and you're going to laugh at this, I had one designer send me their ambigram in an Excel document. They actually created it from scratch in an Excel document. I was mind blown because it was an incredible design, but how they actually did it in Excel versus doing it in Illustrator or Corel Draw or Inkscape, my mind was just completely blown. But it was quite an educational and interesting process, and the book is now 10 years old, and it's still sitting on my bookshelf. One of my design friends, Stefan Bruscher, who's a fantastic lettering artist, book designer, graphic designer, just a really great person all around. He connected me with someone at Peach Feet Publishing, who ended up publishing the book. And it was after kind of cold pitching and cold calling, the book happened because a friend referred me to someone they knew. Like I said, I never went into publishing the book expecting it to be a bestseller, #1 New York Times list. It was a very narrow niche, but it was a passion project. I wanted to get it out there. And if enough copies sold that would warrant a second printing, that would have been great. If it didn't warrant a second printing, it was still a huge step in my career. It was a great book to give to the community, and we would have just ended at that. So it didn't sell as many copies as I wanted to. So uh, it ran out. Whatever copies they printed off, it ran out, and then I actually got the rights back for the book from the publisher. So I think Ambigrams Reveal 2.0 or whatever that title will be, hopefully more creative than that. It will be in the works in the next year or so. Uh, that's a simple answer. The An eye roll or a head shake or a guttural "ugh, not again" sound. That to me usually gauges the success of a pun. So if I get that reaction, it means the pun is great. In my mind, all my puns are good, but that's in my mind. In the mind of all my friends, they're absolutely awful, or most of them. I do have a few pun lovers that make the puns as well as I do, or better than I do. And one of the funniest things, a lot we communicate with social media so much nowadays. And when I post a pun on Facebook and Instagram, one of the first comments is usually, "Oh, that's horrible, it's awful." But then you get a whole slew of people continuing to make the puns based springboarding off the topic which I started. So they say they hate it, but then they start participating, and that tells me a completely different story. I don't know if I can pinpoint an exact time when I started loving puns or making puns. I've always enjoyed good and bad jokes in my life. I've always made quite a few and heard quite a few. But I can't really say when I started writing my own puns, but I know that for a fact I have a document on my iPhone, my notes, where I just add as soon as they come into mind, as soon as I write them, anywhere pretty much. And one of the most fun times I've had is I went to a conference in Australia, the Typism, Typography and Letter and Design Conference in 2019, and I met the designer there, who I've known for a couple of years. We met in New York, but we got a chance to hang out over dinner. And he's a musician, lettering artist, font designer, and type aficionado, and he also loves jokes and puns. So a group of us went to dinner, and everybody's chatting. Everybody's just enjoying themselves, getting to know each other. And we ended up sitting across from each other. And we exchanged our phones because coincidentally, he also has a list of jokes and puns that he writes on his phone. So here we are sitting across from each other, everybody talking about life and type and design and serious topics. And we're sitting there laughing and snickering each other's phones like two, well, not to be rude, like two idiots. And it was one of the best moments I've ever had. The way my career has unfolded, it's been pretty much freelance, ranging from contracts that were short of 2 days, believe it or not, to almost 2.5 years, which is what just kept renewing and ongoing over a period of years. The only two full-time jobs that I really had, there were two teaching jobs. So if you go by the traditional model of a job of 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, those are the only two full-time design jobs I've really had because everything else has been contract and freelance. As far as favorite projects, I don't think I can go further without telling you about the movie Thor: Love and Thunder. And I think it was a couple of years ago when I was sitting in my computer and I got an email from this agency. It was like animation 3D studio, and they said, "Are you interested in some freelance lettering work? We have this big project we're working on." I said, "Sure, it's lettering project, freelance money. I'm interested. Bring it on." And we connected the next day, and it turned out that we're working on the titles for the movie Thor: Love and Thunder. Which the moment we went in the room and they told us what this was, and I came on the project a few days after everyone started, my jaw, I don't know if physically my jaw is capable of hitting the ground, but I think if it was physically possible, it would have definitely been on the floor. So it was a very intense week and a half to two where the whole group of freelancers just pitched different ideas to the agency, and it was a lot of lettering, a lot of sketching, a lot of digital work. And in the end, you know, I'm going to try not to curse, but it's throwing the S word at the wall and seeing what sticks. And sometimes it was just get as many ideas on paper. Sometimes it was focusing on a very specific aesthetic and developing that. And in the end, there were so many brilliant designs. I didn't think that, I didn't think any of mine would be chosen because that's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes you do a lot of concept development of work, and sometimes it doesn't get chosen. But I was very surprised to see that they selected three of mine because there's so many incredibly talented people working in this. And the best part was I didn't know that the names of the freelance people would be in the credits at the end of the movie. So one day I'm sitting there and my friend texts me a photograph in the theater. He's like, "Dude, your name is in the Thor movie." I'm like, I'm sorry, my name is in the actual credits." So I went and I looked, and sure enough, there was a list of all the credits of all the freelancers whose work was in there. And that to me was mind blowing, and that to me is definitely the highlight of my freelance lettering work so far. I'd rather not say because that would give away my age, but no, I've been freelancing on and off since 2002, which is when I graduated from undergrad. Well, in the interest of full transparency, it's kind of there's two sides to this. One side, which may not be the most positive side, but it's just a fact of life, has been challenging to find full time work sometimes. Not necessarily because of lack of work, but because of A, what I'm looking for, but B, because what the agency themselves are looking for. Like, I have a very specific skill set. For better or for worse, it could be considered a very narrow skill set, but it's what I'm good at. And sometimes when agencies are looking for a full 360, I hate that word, but 360-degree designer, that's not something I can offer. So that's the downside of having a skill set that focuses on typography and lettering and some branding. But the upside is that freelancing gives you flexibility. So by necessity, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. By the fact that maybe I didn't have much luck getting full-time jobs, maybe due to my skill set or due to the environment. I've had the incredible luck and privilege working in so many different spaces and so many different places and people that I figured out what I like and what environments I enjoy and what environments I'm not the best fit for. And just like any freelance world, every client is not the greatest fit for every designer, and vice versa. So by the virtue of working for so many different freelance clients, whether it's in-house or just me working one-on-one with a client, I figured out what I like and what I don't like, and where I am a good fit and where I'm not a good fit. And I just kind of went from there. Well, most of the work I've done with independent musicians is just doing some one-off projects, whether it's a bit of lettering or a logo. So it's not a biggest part of my portfolio. Who have I worked with? The ACDC project I posted, that was just my own work. So I haven't had the fortune to work with them, even though I would drop everything. I'd go to Australia to work with them. Absolutely. But no, it's more just one-off lettering pieces, whether it's a logo, whether it's a poster, whether it's just a couple icons, whether just helping with some imagery touching. So it's not a huge part of my portfolio, but it's fun to work with independent creatives, independent musicians, photographers, because it's always in a way it's always more interesting than working with a brand like a public facing brand, which we always see Pepsi or we see Uber or we see any other, you name it, and we see their public face. With independent musicians, small scale businesses, it's always more interesting because they have a much more narrow niche, it's much more unique clientele and people and the personality. It may sound cliche, but when you're teaching something to a class, to a student, and first of all, you see that metaphorical light bulb go off above their head when they understand the concept, or they understand the process, or so the pieces start fitting together for them. That's one of my favorite moments. But more importantly, if I have a student or a group of students that are maybe they could be struggling with any aspect of design, whether it's mood boarding, whether it's sketching, whether it's developing the final piece. So when I see them fall into kind of the final stages and everything, and they start to understand it better, and it's not even necessarily about the final result, the end result, the outcome, but they start understanding the process of design better, the nitty gritty, the so to speak, what's under the hood versus just the final, like Ashley said, the beautiful outcome that everybody shares on Instagram or Twitter, or formerly known as X, or any other social media avenue. That to me, understanding what it takes to get to the end result is in a way more important than getting the end result. And it's kind of the same thing I feel with lettering. With lettering, I tell my students, "Oh, we want," when they say, "Oh, we want to make it look perfect and illustrated." I said, "Well, you know what? If you make your sketches look perfect on paper, then work in making them perfect in Illustrator is the last 1 or 2% of the process. Everything else, what happens on paper, the brainstorming, the endless sketches, that's what really makes you a better lettering artist and a better designer." So when they understand how to get to the end result, that to me is everything. Well, I started teaching right out of grad school. So I taught for 5 years, from 2006 to 2011. Then I took a break from that. I moved to New York City from Connecticut and started freelancing. I taught for 1 semester at FIT, just filling in as a favor for a night class for someone, and then I taught 4 years at another design school, kind of like a boot camp style accelerated program in New York as well. So all together about 8.5, 9 years. Well, I think it's my many years of experience in getting various infractions, speeding tickets, parking tickets, driving too fast, driving too slow. I have experience with a wide range of infractions, hopping a turnstile in New York City when I was 22 or 23. But more importantly, a few months ago, I think it was July 20th of this year, I was driving to New York, actually for the same reason I'm doing today. And it was a beautiful sunny day. I was in the left lane. I decided to open up a little bit, as we all do sometimes on the highway when the road is clear and there's nice weather and the conditions are perfect. And unfortunately, due to those perfect conditions, there was also a very nice police officer on the side of the road a few miles ahead, and he caught me driving rather fast in the left lane, and he was very nice about it. He said, you were driving a little fast, and I told him what I told you. Officer, it's a nice day. I wanted to have a manual transmission. I wanted to open up a bit. He said, I understand, but I'd appreciate if you slow down. And then he gave me this gaudy, absolutely atrocious printout, not even in color, black and white, wall of text, poor printing. And I just, after he pulled away from the window, I looked at it, like, oh God, this is incredibly ugly. I need to do something about this. And then a few weeks later, when I got home, I had a lull in my schedule for the week, and I decided, let me see if I can remake this. Let me reimagine a ticket. So I decided to imagine just a ticket, and I thought it would end there. But then I thought to myself a few weeks later, I said, okay, well, that's one infraction, but there's parking tickets, there's speeding tickets, there's jury summons, there's, you know, I don't know, streaking throughout a park, whatever infraction you might be able to get. They're probably black and white. They're probably printed on cheap paper. They probably have a wall of text. They're probably really hard to look at. So I thought to myself, why don't I just create a series of infractions? So I created the speeding ticket. I created the parking ticket, and I think the next one I'm going to work on is a jury summons, because if there was ever a wall of text, it's that unfolding. It's almost rivals the CVS receipt link that you usually see when you go to CVS. I'm really glad that I found my passion for type. And it's ironic because I found my passion for hand-drawn type and lettering and ambigrams much later than school, undergrad or grad school. It was not until 2 years after grad school when my obsession with ambigrams began. So I'm really glad that I found that niche, but I'm more importantly, I'm glad that I haven't lost a passion for it, because like all creative people, whether you're a photographer, whether you do woodworking, whether you create, I don't know, create hand weave baskets, whatever your creative passion may be, you'll have ups and downs. You'll get a couple of weeks or a couple of months where you just don't feel like doing any lettering, or you don't want to draw an ambigram, or you just don't want to pick up a pencil for any sketches whatsoever. But I'm just really happy that I not only found a passion, but I was able to keep that passion going. And even if I do take breaks sometimes, and there have been breaks where I don't draw type for a few weeks at a time, not even ambigrams, just any letters, and I work on just traditional design. I just don't have the desire for it. But I'm proud of the fact that I've always come back to typography and lettering and ambigrams, because that's what I love doing, even though, like, we all need a break. Husbands and wives, they all need a break from each other. They all need a quiet moment from each other, from the kids. And just like with typography and lettering, sometimes you need to take a break from it in order to come back, and then you realize, I still love it. I still want to do it, and I still want to keep on creating. It's an event called Type Thursday, and it happens once every month. It's a really great event that started, I think, 2015, 2016 in a bar in Brooklyn somewhere, and now it's grown to having chapters, and I think there's maybe 12, 15 chapters all over the world. Essentially, we get together. There is a 3 to 4 speaker panel. They each present a type or lettering based project. And after they present the project, they get a 5 to 10 minute session of Q&A with the audience, where you get feedback, you get some critiques. And I'm actually the MC of the event, so I get to stand there with a mic, moderate, make sure nothing gets out of hand. I also get to make bad jokes, and people have to stay and listen to them, so they don't have a choice. So that's the part that I'm most happy about. I get to make jokes, and they have to sit there and listen to them.